Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a very popular foreign horror franchise from Spain, Spanish language English subs, released in the year 2012, directed by Paco Plaza, and this film is called Rec 3 Genesis. And the story of Rec 3 Genesis is as follows. Rec Genesis follows Caldo and Clara as they celebrate the most important day of their lives, their wedding. Everything appears to be running smoothly, and the bride and groom and their families are enjoying a wonderful day. That is until some of the guests start showing signs of a strange illness. Before they know what's happening, the bride and groom find themselves in the middle of a hellish ordeal, as an uncontrollable torrent of violence is unleashed on the wedding. Amidst the chaos, Caldo and Clara become separated and begin a desperate search for one another. What started off as an idyllic day quickly descends into a nightmare of the worst kind. So the movie takes place at a wedding between Caldo and Clara. All the guests are turning up to the church and there's a very happy vibe. And surprisingly enough, you really do get a connection with the main two characters. So it's their day and you want to have, them happy. So before the wedding started, Caldo's uncle was bitten by a dog, and he's already starting to show signs of an illness. Now, by the time the wedding party go from the church to the reception hall, Caldo's uncle has been completely consumed by this illness and has been transformed into a bloodthirsty cannibal. Now, he takes a bite out of one of the guests, and this has a domino effect, as the virus is transmitted through bites. So pretty soon, everyone in the reception hall is biting one another, and this, amidst all the chaos, Caldo and Clara are separated. So they spend the rest of the film trying to reunite and get out of here alive together. So if you want to know how the movie unfolds, please go out there and see it for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with a synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the film. This one gained so much criticism because of the fact it's so much different from the first two films of the series. This one is not a shaky cam film, so that completely goes against what everything that Rec is about. But for that, I kind of appreciated, before I saw it, I appreciated that because it kind of felt to me that these directors weren't all about cashing in off the name. You get a lot of franchises like Saw and Final Destination, all those kinds of films where it's basically just the same thing over, recycled over and over and over. And it's just all about the money, not so much about the audience. So before going in to see this film, I kind of got the impression that Paco Plaza, the director of this film, was paying respect to the audience by giving them something different. It was a risk, but I think that risks are a sign of directors who fully understand what film is all about. So going into it, I gave it the right expectations. I think the reason why so many people hated it is because they went into there misled. Now, the first 20 minutes of the film is handheld camera, so it promises something very similar to the first two Rec films. Very serious, and it kind of gives you an impending sense of dread, even though it is a very happy vibe. You know things are going to go from bad to worse, and it does promise something that the first two deliver. But then it kind of goes into a traditional horror film, and it ditches the shaky cam, and it goes down a very light-hearted approach. So it's kind of two films in one. You've got the first 20 minutes that is typical Rec, and then the last 3/4 of the film, you've got a completely different film. So I kind of gave myself every opportunity to like the film because I knew exactly what I was expecting. Unfortunately, although I expected something different, I thought the risk that Paco Plaza took really didn't work, and it hurt the franchise greatly. Now, the first 20 minutes is the best by far for the film because, as I said, it is typical Rec. It has that impending sense of doom. You're waiting for something bad to happen. There's a lot of suspense, and you know that the person who was bitten is going to transform into something. So it's kind of just waiting for the inevitable. And when the inevitable happens, that's where the movie really starts to go downhill. As soon as he goes from handheld camera to traditional horror film, I felt that Paco Plaza lost all motivation. The movie really becomes sloppy, it becomes boring, and it really feels like the director had ran out of steam after 20 minutes. This should have been a short film because it only had short film material, because the rest of it was basically insulting, to be honest. Now, it's a horror comedy, which I can appreciate if it's done properly. For a horror comedy, there is just not enough horror in it. There is no scary value in it, which is something that Rec is all about. And for a horror comedy, there is just not enough comedy in it. There are a few laughs, a few genuine laughs, but they're few and far between, and they're not sufficient enough to make a horror comedy work. The atmosphere was good for the most part. I mean, visually it was very well done. So it does have a high budget feel to it, and I can tell you right now, Paco Plaza does have talent behind the camera, but whether or not he has inspiration, motivation, and energy, I don't know, because the first two were directed by Jaime Balaguerro and Paco Plaza, but this is the first movie that really has a soul sort of director by himself. It kind of feels like the two directors have split up for the last two films of the franchise. The fourth one is going to be directed by Wame Balaguero, and I really hope that the fourth one goes back to basics, goes back to what Rec is all about, a serious horror film. They took a risk with this one. The risk really didn't work, and so hopefully the fourth one can go back to seriousness, and that can get the franchise back, and it can save it. Because if this is anything to go by, then the franchise is in a lot of danger. The acting was very exaggerated. As I said, though, the good thing about it is that I felt sympathy for the bride and groom. This is their day, and something so horrible has happened. So I really like the bride and groom, and I wanted to see them get through the ordeal. And that's the only reason why I could manage to get through the film, because of the lead too. So they played their characters very, very well. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's not scary. There is no suspense. You're just waiting for the gore to happen. When the gore does happen, I mean, some of the gore sequences were fantastic, like really, really good. So gorehounds will like that. But unfortunately, as is the case with all the other positives, it's just not sufficient enough to really save the film. So in the end, now this is a bitterly disappointing movie. I'm such a fan of the first two. It's not the worst horror movie that I've ever seen. You're going to have to treat this one by itself. But even for a horror film by itself, it really doesn't live up to the expectation. It's not a good horror film, unfortunately, which is sad to say because I'm such a fan of Spanish horror that I really wanted to love it. But if I'm being honest, this one was a massive letdown. The ending to the film was absolutely deplorable, an insult to the audience, and the last quarter of the film especially just felt very, very rushed. It just felt like the director thought, oh crap, I'm out of ideas, let's just get it over with. Come on, come on, come on. And that's what, it comes across as. So, bitterly disappointing. I'm only going to give this one 1.5 stars. There are likeable things to it, but unfortunately the negatives far outweigh the positives. So that's my review of Genesis. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.